Okay, Riley, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with us about your time abroad. I'll run through some questions. So the first question is, tell us a little bit about yourself, when you studied abroad, where did you study, and what was your homeschool in the States?
Yeah, so I'm Riley. I'm 23. I studied abroad when I was a junior. So fall 2018, I spent the semester in Edinburgh, and I'm from Connecticut. I went to school at Villanova and then was at Edinburgh, Arcadia, University of Edinburgh when I studied abroad in 2018.
Fantastic. Why did you choose Scotland as your study abroad destination?
Yeah, so my like picking a location was like a really long process for me. I really didn't know what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. But I needed somewhere where I could fulfill a lot of credits at home. So I knew I needed somewhere that had classes in English, but I really didn't want to do any of the like very like super popular places. Like I didn't want to be in London. I didn't really want to be in Italy, somewhere that like everyone goes and it was going to be like me and all American students. So I had a few professors and like advisors at school recommend Scotland. So I started looking into it. And then at first I was kind of thinking St. Andrews, but then someone told me about Edinburgh and just like looking into it and looking at, and then feeling so when I was there too, like the way that it is a city, but it also is like, has more of like a town feel to it. Like it feels very safe. It is very walkable. I really liked that kind of balance where it was still obviously Europe and still somewhere that is a very popular destination, but it didn't feel like America in another country. Like it definitely had that more like authentic is a weird word, but an authentic feel to it.
Thank you. And what were your first impressions of the country? And when you arrived in Edinburgh, what were your first thoughts?
Oh goodness. Yeah. I remember I got there the same time as somebody else in our program. So we like took a cab together and I remember driving down like Prince Street and then turning into Old Town. Like the way it changed was just like so insane to us. We were like, oh my gosh, like we really arrived. And then just being especially in Old Town, like I just remember thinking it was so beautiful and felt like something out of like a movie or out of like Harry Potter. Like that is really what it feels like. And then that first like kind of afternoon of like walking around being so confused by like how it's all hills. We were like, we can't find our way anywhere. And there's all these little alleys. But I think that made it even more magical that it did just feel like we were like wandering through like a storybook. And like I said, I just like feeling so safe and feeling so like you can walk anywhere and go anywhere and do anything and everyone was so friendly. um so even though feeling like wow, I'm definitely in a new place, never in like an overwhelming way. Like it felt very comfortable right away.
Fantastic. Um, how did you find kind of adjusting to a kind of new culture? So when you kind of moved into student accommodation, kind of how were you feeling as you were kind of settling into a new country, the life of a new
Yeah, it was definitely, I didn't know what to expect. I'd never been to Europe before that. And I didn't know anybody like on that was also studying in Scotland in 2018. So it was really just kind of like on the plane, I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen when I get there. So definitely that first, I think, day or two was a big like, I don't know where anything is, and I don't know like what are the grocery stores here called, like things like that, and trying to figure that out. But then having orientation was so helpful because we had like a little pot of people to try to figure it all out with, and just going and like setting up our cell phones and like having to do all those little things that I'd never had to do on my own before in my life, never mind in a different country. It was definitely a little nerve wracking, but I think also exciting. And it was like one of the first times in my life that I really was like, wow, like I'm an adult, I'm independent, I can do things on my own.
What were your classes like, and how were they different from what you were used to back at Villanova?
Yeah, so I took three classes. I took religion, violence, and peace building, modern Middle Eastern history, and Middle Ages history, which were all things I like needed. So that like worked out perfectly. And they were really different from school because our average class size at school is like 24 kids. And then here, I think my smallest class was like 90 kids. So I'd never really been in one of those like big lecture style classes before, which was an interesting experience. But then having the like smaller classes, tutorials, like once or twice a week, was more of what I was used to at Milano, where you're having these really discussion based conversations. I really loved my classes. I still think religion, violence, and peace building was one of the best classes I took like in my 4 years of like college education. And getting to talk about a lot of these things somewhere that's like either like where it's happening or a lot closer to where it's happening than the United States was a really interesting experience. And the different perspectives just at home, like it's not, we have international students, but it's not a big part of the university. But then sitting in a classroom where you have like some people from the United States and then some people from Scotland or other places in the UK, but then like people from Ireland and someone from Italy and someone from France. And especially in a class like religion, violence, and peace building, like everybody is contributing these perspectives that I would have never gotten firsthand like any other time in my life. So that was a really cool experience, especially in those smaller tutorials.
Did you like the more kind of independent style of learning, or did you kind of would you rather have had lots of little assessments kind of running through? How did you find that? Like the big essay
Yeah.
or the big final?
Yeah, so that was definitely another big difference from a lot of my classes here. I think I did like that it wasn't like all these little like at school we have to write like here like a reflection paper every week and all these things, which I think can sometimes have like it's just checking boxes. Like I know I have to write this reflection paper, so I'll just like get it done. But here, because we spent the whole year, or in Scotland, because we spent the whole year focusing on just one or two bigger assignments, they felt more important and it felt like I could put more time into each of them and like really focus on something that I found interesting in that class. Because a lot of them were like, here are your 20 options to write your paper on, like which one do you like? So I was able to dive in deeper into things I like, the things that I was like, that piques my interest, that's what I want to really learn about. So I liked that it felt more important because I could focus on that instead of having like a million other little things to worry about.
Did you participate in any of the Arcadia events?
Yes. So we went to the Kaylee. I forget when that was. Sometime around Thanksgiving. So I guess in like November, we went to the Kaylee, which was like the most fun thing ever. Whenever I'm like watching a show that's like in the UK, I'm always like, I think I learned that dance. But so that was a lot of fun. And then I went on two of the like weekend trips with Arcadia. So I went to Loch Ness, that trip, which was really cool. I just remember being like, I don't believe in conspiracy theories. And then we got there and I was like, there could definitely be a monster in this lake. This is so that was really cool to be up in a part of Scotland that I don't think like, because obviously abroad, like we weren't renting cars and doing all these things. Like it would have been somewhere that would have been hard to do on our own. And to be with people who like really know Scotland in a way that we would never be able to guide ourselves. And then I went on the I forget what it was called, but the activity weekend up to the lake where we stayed in like the lodge and did like kayaking and biking and all these different things, which was such a cool experience. I'm not a huge like outdoorsy person here. Like I like that stuff, but I'm not very experienced in it. So to be like in a lake in a really small town in Scotland and get to experience like all the different things that people do for fun, but then also be in this town with this like very normal everyday life. Like there weren't other Americans there, and get to tour that town and hear about the history and their castles and things like that. That was definitely one of my favorite weekends of all of abroad.
So how did you feel Arcadia helped you through your study abroad experience?
The biggest thing for me that I think made the experience what it was that orientation the first few days that we got there. In a lot of ways, like one, just hearing like this is how you are going to survive in this town. Like, this is what you need to know. This is how like your housing's going to work. This is how your classes are going to work, all those things. But also just in terms of like getting to know other people and being, you know, I'd done college before where I like landed on a campus and didn't know anyone, but I'd never like been in a country where I didn't know a single other person like on that side of the Atlantic Ocean. So feeling like I wasn't like alone in this experience was really helpful, especially right at the beginning. Things didn't really feel overwhelming in Scotland. Like I felt like we were in control of what we were doing, but there also were just times where we were like, we actually have no idea how this works and nobody to ask except the Arcadia office. So that was just a really like a security blanket of knowing that there were people on campus who knew what they were doing and much better than we did and were looking out for us for anything, whether it was academic or social or travel or whatever problem we were having.
What do you think was the hardest thing about studying abroad?
The thing at first, and then that definitely lessened, was like FOMO, like fear of missing out, like what's going on campus, what about like my friends who are like still like at Villanova and still like doing all these things that like I would be doing if I was on campus. And also my friends were like studying abroad in other places and like doing these cool things. So at first there was definitely this concern of like, I don't really know anyone here quite yet. Like we don't have any trips planned. I don't really know what my classes are going to look like. And like everybody else is like at home, things are still really easy. And like, obviously social media is like the highlight reel and all of that. So at first there was definitely that part of it. But then once I like settled in and we were doing things and meeting people and like having all this fun, I think there is a sense of like trying to do everything in 4 months and feeling like I like can't say no to anything. And like, I like can't just go to bed this night. Like there's this thing going on. We like have to go. And we would like take really early flights and be like, we're so tired, but we need to do everything in this city that we're visiting. So I think definitely around the middle, there was like this exhaustion point of it was like, I want to do everything possible in the 2 months we have left, but I need to sleep this weekend. So definitely trying to find that balance of like just being like a normal college student in Edinburgh and like getting that whole experience with also getting to see and do as much as possible in the short time we're there.
Too much fun to be had.
Yeah.
What do you think you learned the most from your experience?
Yeah, so I'm definitely like one of those people who's like study abroad changed my life. Like I'm a whole new person because I studied abroad, but I really genuinely believe that. Like I think the things that I learned the most were like really about myself and like my own um like capabilities and my own independence and my own confidence where like I go to school or went to school like 4 hours away, which felt like a big jump, like leaving high school. I was like, this is like, whew, I'm really going far here. I don't know how this is going to go. And like, I always thought like, I'll be back in my hometown forever, like all these things. And then I went abroad and I was like, I could go anywhere and I could do anything and like I would be okay and I would be happy and like just really expanding my whole idea of like I knew the world was big, but I didn't think that like my world was going to be that big. And then I studied abroad and I was like, I want to see all of this and like be a part of all of this. And I really could move if I wanted to, and I could do all these things. So I think I definitely gained a lot of confidence and independence and just this feeling of like really like anything is possible. Like there's no reason to limit myself at 20. Like there's so much out there for all of us to do and see.
That's fantastic, Riley. You are the study abroad
Yeah.
student like have changed
Yeah.
your life for you. Let's see. How has study abroad helped your career, academic or otherwise, since returning? So how has it changed how you do things in terms of your employment and things like that?
Yeah, so definitely right away coming back and being in college for another year and a half, it I think definitely informed like a lot of the ways I was thinking about my classes. I took international relations like this semester I got back, and all of a sudden things were like, yeah, I know how like the government works in this country. Like I've been there and just things like that that felt a lot more like attainable and like, oh, this like all of a sudden makes sense that I've like seen this. So just with my classes, I think, and just having a more like global perspective in some sense. Um, and then I graduated in May, and now I'm a social studies teacher. So that it's informed my teaching definitely more than I even expected, um, in terms of being able to like really explain things to kids and really being able to be like, this is what it's like to be there, for the kids, because I'm in my first year. So far I've taught the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, which are both like, I took a Middle Ages history class while I was in Scotland. So that's like what I'm pulling on without even the fact that it was in Scotland.
That's great. That's great, right? It's great you're a teacher and you're kind of bringing some of this kind of global perspective into a classroom, and I just think it's what we all do kind of over here is kind of try to create a global perspective, different ways of looking at worlds and problems and things. So I think that's fantastic. Why would you recommend future study abroad students study in Scotland?
I think the thing about Edinburgh specifically is it is a city. Like there's so much to do. There's all these different like areas that are really like distinct in there. Um, like the vibe of each of them, and whatever you're looking for, there's somewhere to find it. And there's like the festivals and the farmers markets and all these very city things, but it was never like overwhelming. It was never like I can't go out alone at night, or like it's going to take too long to get to this part of the city, or um we got to take this train and then switch to this train and then switch to this bus. Like it just was so homey. Like I felt very much a part of it. I felt like I could walk anywhere. I felt like I could do anything alone or with other people. I felt like I really knew it by the end. Like I knew how to get most places and knew what was going on. So I really think that balance is really special, especially if you're like flying across the ocean to a place you've never been. I can't imagine having like arrived in a city that was humongous and like very overwhelming. So I really loved that balance where there was so much going on, but it was never like overwhelming at all.
Thank you so much for your answers and your real love for study abroad and your love for Scotland.